The massive space station floated like a silver jewel against the stars. Ships from dozens of worlds docked at its arms, bringing diplomats from across the galaxy. The Galactic Council Station was the most important place in known space, where wars were prevented and peace was made. Ambassador Elena Cross walked through the station's wide corridors, her simple black suit standing out among the colorful robes and armor of alien diplomats. At 54, she had spent half her life in space, talking to creatures that looked like nothing from Earth. Her gray hair was pulled back neatly, and her calm brown eyes had seen things that would terrify most humans. Today was supposed to be her greatest achievement. The Kether Empire and the Altarian Coalition had been moving toward war for months. Millions of lives hung in the balance. If these two powers fought, the conflict would spread across dozens of star systems. Entire worlds would burn. Cross had spent 3 years setting up these talks. She knew the Kether were proud warriors who valued strength above all else. The Altarians were peaceful traders who controlled valuable mining worlds. The Kether wanted those worlds. The Altarians wanted to keep them. The main conference room was huge, with a round table that could seat 50 beings. Delegates were already arriving. The Altarians looked like tall, thin humans with blue-gray skin and large black eyes. They moved quietly and spoke in soft voices. Their leader, Trade Minister, nodded respectfully to Cross as she entered. The Kether were different. They stood nearly 8 feet tall, with thick gray skin covered in natural armor plates. Their faces were angular, with sharp teeth and eyes like burning amber. War Prince Kalen led their group, wearing ceremonial armor that gleamed under the station's lights. He looked at Cross like she was an insect. "The human speaks for no one," Kalen said in his harsh voice. "Why do you waste our time with this creature?" Cross had heard worse. Much worse. "Your Highness, I speak for the neutral parties who want peace. My people have no stake in this conflict beyond preventing unnecessary death." Kalen laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Death is never unnecessary. It proves who is strong and who is weak." The morning talks went nowhere. The Kether demanded complete surrender. The Altarians offered trade agreements. Neither side would bend. Cross took notes and watched body language, looking for any opening that might lead to compromise. During the lunch break, she walked to her small office aboard the station. Her assistant, David Torres, was waiting with a worried expression. "How bad is it?" David asked. "Bad, but not hopeless. Kalen is putting on a show for his followers. The real power is his advisor, General Theron. If I can reach him—" "Elena, be careful. Intelligence reports say the Kether are not happy that humans are running these talks. They think we're beneath them." Cross smiled sadly. "Most species think that, David. It's what makes us useful as mediators. Nobody fears the harmless humans." The evening session was a formal dinner meant to relax tensions. Cross sat between a Kether delegate and a nervous-looking representative from the Centauri Republic. The food was synthetic but designed to be safe for most species. Cross picked at her meal, more focused on conversation than eating. Kalen stood suddenly, raising a crystal glass filled with blue liquid. "A toast," he announced, his voice carrying across the room. "To the strong who take what they want, and to the weak who serve their betters." Other Kether raised their glasses. Most aliens looked uncomfortable but followed along. Cross raised her water glass politely. Small insults were not worth fighting over. "I have a special drink for our human friend," Kalen said, gesturing to a servant. The Kether brought Cross a glass of the same blue liquid. A traditional Kether drink. It would be rude to refuse. Cross looked at the glass. Something felt wrong. The liquid shimmered strangely, and there was an odd smell. But refusing would insult the Kether and might end the talks completely. "Of course, Your Highness. Thank you for the honor." She lifted the glass and drank it all at once. The liquid burned her throat and tasted like copper and bitter herbs. Around the room, conversations continued. Only David, sitting across the room, seemed to notice anything unusual. At first, Cross felt nothing. Then her vision began to blur. Her hands started shaking. The glass fell from her fingers and shattered on the floor. "Elena!" David jumped up from his seat. Cross tried to speak but could not form words. Her body felt like it was on fire from the inside. She fell from her chair, gasping for air that would not come. The blue liquid had been poison. David reached her first, dropping to his knees beside the dying ambassador. "Get a doctor now!" But Cross knew it was too late. She could feel her heart stopping. Her body was shutting down system by system. Around her, alien delegates stood in shock. Some called for medical help. Others backed away in fear. Kalen remained in his seat, watching with cold satisfaction. "The human has taken ill," he said calmly. Perhaps the food did not agree with her weak stomach. Cross's last sight was David's face, filled with rage and grief. Her last thought was of home, of Earth, of the garden she would never see again. Ambassador Elena Cross died on the floor of the Galactic Council Station, surrounded by the aliens she had spent her life trying to understand. The station's medical team arrived too late. Their scanners confirmed what everyone already knew. The poison was from Keth Prime, a neural toxin that killed quickly and painfully. Only the Kether had access to it. Trade Minister Velter stood over the body, his large black eyes filled with tears. "She was trying to save us all," he whispered. Kalen rose from his seat, straightening his ceremonial armor. "The human was weak. This proves that her species has no place in galactic affairs. Come, we return to our ship. There is nothing more to discuss here." The Kether delegation left the dining hall without another word. They claimed diplomatic immunity and departed the station within the hour. Their final message was broadcast to all ships in the area: humans are beneath the consideration of true warriors. David held Elena's still hand as the medical team prepared the body. He had worked with her for 6 years, traveling to dozens of worlds. Elena Cross had been brave, patient, and endlessly hopeful that different species could find common ground. Now she was dead, murdered in front of 50 witnesses, and her killers were flying away free. The news spread quickly through the station and beyond. Within hours, every human in the galaxy knew that their most respected diplomat had been poisoned by a Kether war prince. Most alien species expressed polite sympathy but privately thought it was just another example of human weakness. David stood at the viewing port of his quarters, watching ships come and go. He held a small communication device that had been vibrating steadily since the murder. All humans in space had received the same coded message an hour ago. He finally activated it. "Come home," it said. "Come home now." Looking out at the stars, David wondered what home would say about Elena Cross's death. The galaxy was about to find out that humans remembered their friends, and they never forgot their enemies. 3 days after Ambassador Cross's murder, something strange happened across the galaxy. Every human ship, station, and outpost received the same simple message: "Come home." David Torres was on the first transport back to Earth. He sat in his small cabin, staring out at the stars as they jumped through hyperspace. Around him, other humans made the same journey. Nobody talked much. They all knew why they were leaving. On Trade Station Kepler 7, human merchants quietly closed their shops. They sold nothing, bought nothing, answered no questions. Within a week, their ships were gone. The station's alien owners were confused but not worried. Humans were useful, but not essential. Other traders would fill the gap. In the vegan system, human mining crews finished their shifts and never came back. The Vegan Crystal Corporation found their equipment neatly stored and their quarters clean. A simple note said their contracts were terminated immediately. The vegans hired new crews, but production dropped by 60%. Humans, it turned out, had been running the most efficient operations. Dr. Marcus Webb was Earth's top xenobiologist, working on Altair 4 to study new forms of life. He had spent 12 years there, longer than any human. When the message came, he packed his research and took the next ship home. His alien colleagues begged him to stay. His work was too important to abandon. Webb just shook his head and walked away. The pattern repeated on hundreds of worlds. Human doctors left their hospitals. Human engineers abandoned their projects. Human teachers walked out of their classrooms. Some had lived off-world for decades. Some had alien friends they loved like family. None of that mattered. The message was clear: come home now. The Galactic Council met in emergency session 2 weeks after the poisoning. Trade Minister Velter looked tired and worried. Without human mediators, the talks with the Kether had collapsed completely. War seemed certain. "They cannot simply vanish," said Council Speaker Zarthal, an elderly Rigelian with purple skin and too many arms. "All legally terminated," replied the Council's head lawyer, studying his files. Every human agreement had the same clause: immediate withdrawal in case of threats to human lives. They are completely within their rights. Admiral Crix of the Centauri Republic leaned forward. "This is clearly an overreaction to one unfortunate incident." The Kether claimed diplomatic immunity. Technically, no crime was committed. Velter's black eyes flashed with anger. Ambassador Cross was murdered in front of 50 witnesses. How is that not a crime? The Kether say she died of natural causes. A weak human constitution. That is a lie, and everyone knows it. Speaker Zarthal tapped his gavel. What matters now is the practical situation. Without humans to mediate, we face a major war. But humanity was not answering calls. Earth's communication systems were working, but all official messages got the same automatic reply: "The United Earth Government is conducting internal affairs. We will resume normal diplomatic relations when appropriate." What was happening inside human space remained a mystery. Deep space sensors detected massive energy signatures. Ancient defense platforms dormant for centuries were powering up. Ships were moving between Earth, Mars, and the outer colonies in patterns that suggested military mobilization. The Proxima Centauri system went completely dark. No signals in or out. Long-range scans showed industrial activity on a scale never seen before. Whatever the humans were building, they were building a lot of it. Captain Vex of the merchant vessel Starseeker had traded with humans for 20 years. She tried to dock at Luna Station, Earth's moon, where she had done business many times. The station was still there, but it was different. New weapons emplacements. Shields that glowed with dangerous energy. "Luna Control to Starseeker," came a cold voice. "You are entering restricted space. State your business." "I have a cargo delivery for Earth." "All civilian contracts with Earth have been suspended. Turn around immediately." "But we have been trading partners for." "Turn around now, or be destroyed." Vex looked at her sensors. 3 human ships had appeared around her vessel. They were not converted freighters. These were warships built for killing. She turned around. Stories like Vex spread quickly through the trader networks. Humans had always been friendly, open to visitors, happy to do business with anyone. Now their space was closed to all outsiders. The few aliens who tried to enter were turned away by ships that seemed to have appeared from nowhere. The Kether Empire was not concerned. War Prince Kalen had been promoted for eliminating the human diplomat. He gave speeches about Kether superiority and human cowardice. "They run and hide like the weak creatures they are," he told cheering crowds. "This proves that humans have no place among the strong races of the galaxy." But some Kether intelligence officers were not so confident. Their long-range sensors detected something troubling. Human ships were moving in the dark spaces between stars, places where no one usually went. The ships were big, much bigger than the small vessels humans normally used. General Theron, Kalen's advisor, studied the reports in his private office. He had been a soldier for 60 years, fighting in a dozen wars. Something about this situation felt wrong. "The humans are planning something," he told his aide. They did not recall every human from every world out of panic. This was planned. The aide looked uncomfortable. "What do you think they are planning, sir?" Theron stared at the star charts on his wall. Hundreds of systems, dozens of major powers, millions of ships. Somewhere out there, humanity was preparing for something. "I think," he said slowly, "that we may have made a terrible mistake." On Earth, David Torres stood in the office that had once belonged to Elena Cross. He was now acting ambassador, but there were no aliens to talk to. Earth had closed its borders to everyone. Outside his window, he could see construction yards in Earth orbit. Massive ships were taking shape, built by automated systems that worked day and night. These were not peaceful exploration vessels. These were weapons of war. David had seen the classified briefings. He knew what Earth was planning. The galaxy thought humans were weak because they avoided fighting. The galaxy was about to learn the truth. Humans had not avoided fighting because they were weak. They had avoided fighting because they knew what they were capable of. For 300 years since first contact, humanity had chosen peace. They had built trade networks instead of battle fleets. They had trained diplomats instead of soldiers. But they had not forgotten how to make war. David thought of Elena Cross, who had died believing that peace was possible between species. She had spent her life building bridges between humans and aliens. She had been murdered for trying to prevent a war. Now there would be war, but not the war anyone expected. He picked up the secure communicator on his desk. This is Acting Ambassador Torres. Status report on Operation Reckoning. All human personnel have returned safely, came the reply. Fleet deployment is 70% complete. We are ready to begin Phase 2. Understood. Begin when ready. David put down the communicator and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Kether were celebrating their victory over the weak humans. They had no idea what was coming. The silence was about to end. The ship that arrived at the Galactic Council Station was not what anyone expected. The Harmony's end was small, elegant, and painted in the peaceful blue and white colors of the human diplomatic corps. It looked exactly like the ship Ambassador Cross had used, but the weapon sensors told a different story. Hidden beneath the diplomatic paint job were defensive systems that made some military vessels look weak. Captain David Torres requested permission to dock for an important announcement. Council Speaker Zarthel met him at the airlock with a dozen other delegates. They were desperate to restart negotiations before the Kether-Altarian War began. "Captain Torres," the speaker said, his purple skin darker with worry. "Thank you for coming. We urgently need human help." David raised his hand to stop him. He wore the same simple black suit that Elena Cross had favored, but his expression was much colder. "I am here to deliver a message from the United Earth Government. Nothing more." They walked to the main council chamber. David noticed the nervous looks from alien delegates. The way security guards watched him more carefully than before. Word of humanity's strange withdrawal had spread fear throughout the station. David stood at the center of the great circular table. He had no notes, no datapad, no diplomatic aids. He spoke from memory, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. The United Earth Government formally withdraws from all galactic treaties, trade agreements, and diplomatic accords, effective immediately. This includes our membership in the Galactic Council, our participation in the Common Defense Alliance, and our obligations under the Species Protection Act. The chamber erupted. Delegates jumped to their feet, shouting questions in dozens of languages. Speaker Zarthel banged his gavel repeatedly. "Order! Order!" He turned to David. "Captain, surely this is a negotiating position. What does Earth want in exchange for reconsidering?" "Nothing," David replied simply. "This is not a negotiation. This is a statement of fact." Trade Minister Velter stepped forward, his large black eyes pleading. "Captain, without human mediation, there will be war. Millions will die. Ambassador Cross died trying to prevent this conflict. Would you dishonor her memory?" For the first time, David's cold expression showed emotion. Pain flickered across his face. Ambassador Cross died because she believed aliens could be trusted to behave with honor. She was wrong. The Kether acted without council approval, Velter protested. Most species condemned the murder. Condemned it. David's voice grew sharp. Your condemnation was a single paragraph in the official record. The Kether claimed diplomatic immunity, and you accepted it. A human diplomat was murdered in front of 50 witnesses, and you did nothing. Admiral Crix of the Centauri Republic stood up. "The law is the law, Captain. Diplomatic immunity exists for good reasons. We cannot simply ignore it because we dislike the results." David stared at him for a long moment. "You are right, Admiral. The law is the law. Under galactic law, the murder of Ambassador Cross was technically legal." He paused. Under human law, it was an act of war. The chamber fell silent. "War." Speaker Zarthel laughed nervously. "Captain, surely you do not mean war between humans and Kether. Your species has no military to speak of. The Kether Empire has conquered dozens of worlds." David smiled, and it was not a pleasant smile. Speaker Zarthal, may I ask why you believe humans have no military? Well, your ships are civilian vessels. Your colonies have no major defenses. Your people are traders and diplomats, not soldiers. Have you ever seen a human military base? The speaker paused. No. I assumed humans simply did not build such things. Have you ever seen a human warship? The converted freighters your patrol forces use hardly count as warships. David nodded slowly. 300 years ago, when humans first left Earth, we built exactly what you describe. Small ships for exploration. Peaceful colonies focused on trade. We presented ourselves to the galaxy as harmless neighbors who wanted only friendship and commerce. He walked around the circular table as he spoke, his footsteps echoing in the quiet chamber. What we did not mention was that every human world has defense systems that could turn a planet into a fortress. Every human merchant ship has hidden weapons and military-trained crew. Every human colony is actually a military outpost disguised as a civilian settlement. The delegates shifted uncomfortably. But why? Asked Dr. Seifel of the Vegan Science Council. Why hide military strength? David stopped walking and faced the assembly. Because we learned something important in our early space exploration. Every species in this galaxy judges others by their military power. The strong dominate, the weak serve. There is no middle ground. He gestured to the empty seats where human delegates used to sit. So we chose to appear weak. We became mediators, traders, diplomats, useful enough to be valuable, harmless enough to be trusted. For 3 centuries, this strategy worked perfectly. He paused. Until Ambassador Cross was murdered. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Speaker Zarthal cleared his throat nervously. Captain, even if what you say is true, surely humanity does not want war. Your people have always chosen peaceful solutions. You are correct, David replied. Humans prefer peace. War is wasteful, destructive, and morally questionable. We avoid it whenever possible. His expression grew darker. But when war becomes necessary, we fight to win. Admiral Crix leaned forward. What exactly are you threatening, Captain? I am not threatening anything, Admiral. I am explaining what has already begun. David touched a control on his wrist device. 3 hours ago, Kether listening posts detected human ships moving through their outer territory. These ships did not respond to hails or warnings. They simply appeared, completed their missions, and vanished. What missions? Velter asked quietly. Intelligence gathering. Target assessment. Preparation. David's smile returned. The Kether Empire has been mapped, catalogued, and analyzed. We know the location of every military base, every supply depot, every government facility. We know their ship designs, their tactical doctrines, their strategic weaknesses. He paused to let this information sink in. We also know about the civilian populations they have enslaved, the prisoners they have tortured, and the worlds they have destroyed for sport. The galaxy may accept these things as normal Kether behavior. Humans do not. The chamber was completely silent now. Even the air recycling system seemed to have stopped. Captain, Speaker Zarthal said carefully, what does Earth intend to do? David walked to the great viewing window that showed the stars beyond the station. The Kether Empire will surrender unconditionally, or it will be destroyed completely. War Prince Kalen will face trial for the murder of a human diplomat, or his entire bloodline will be eliminated. The choice is theirs. That is impossible, Admiral Crix protested. The Kether military is massive. They have battle fleets that could. Admiral, David interrupted, how many human ships have you seen in your career? Perhaps 100. Mostly small traders and diplomatic vessels. The human fleet currently moving toward Kether space consists of over 2,000 warships, including 47 dreadnoughts that are larger than any ship in the Kether Navy. The numbers were impossible. The galaxy had never seen a fleet that size. Where did they come from? Whispered Dr. Seifel. We built them, David said simply. In the dark spaces between stars where no one thinks to look. While you all assumed humans were peaceful traders, we were preparing for the day when peace would fail. He turned back to face the assembly. That day has come. Trade Minister Velter stood up slowly. Captain, what about the rest of us? What about species that had nothing to do with Ambassador Cross's death? David's expression softened slightly. Species that wish to remain neutral may do so. We have no quarrel with anyone except the Kether and those who choose to help them. He paused. However, the galaxy will change. The time when military strength determined diplomatic status is ending. When this war is over, there will be new rules. What kind of rules? Speaker Zarthal asked. Rules that protect diplomats. Rules that prevent the strong from simply taking what they want from the weak. Rules that make murder unacceptable, regardless of diplomatic immunity. David walked toward the exit, then stopped and looked back. Oh, and Speaker Zarthal, you asked earlier about dishonoring Ambassador Cross's memory. His voice grew soft. Elena Cross died believing that intelligent species could find peaceful solutions to their problems. I intend to make sure her death creates exactly that kind of galaxy. He left the chamber in absolute silence. Outside, the Harmony's End departed the station and jumped to hyperspace, carrying news that would change everything. The age of human diplomacy was ending. The age of human dominance was about to begin. War Prince Kalen stood on the bridge of his flagship Eternal Glory, watching the stars through the great viewing windows. 2 weeks had passed since the human diplomat's death, and he felt nothing but satisfaction. The weak species had run away like frightened animals, proving Kether superiority once again. Your Highness, his communications officer called out. We are receiving strange reports from the outer colonies. Kalen did not turn around. Handle it yourself, Commander. Sir, 3 mining stations have gone completely silent. No distress calls, no emergency beacons. They simply stopped transmitting. Now Kalen turned. Mining stations were heavily defended. They did not simply vanish. Send patrol ships to investigate. Within hours, the patrol ships reached the first silent station. What they found defied explanation. The mining platform was intact but completely abandoned. Equipment was shut down properly. Living quarters were empty but clean. The defense systems were offline, but they had not been destroyed. Most disturbing of all, the station's computer systems had been professionally stripped of all useful data, including detailed files about Kether military procedures, ship designs, and strategic plans. General Theron studied the reports aboard the Eternal Glory. Sir, look at the security recordings from the 3rd station. The footage showed attackers in full combat armor, their identities hidden. They moved with professional precision, using weapons that cut through Kether armor like paper. But what bothered Theron most was their behavior. They were carefully evacuating civilians, not killing everyone they found. Pirates do not usually worry about civilian safety, sir. No, Theron agreed. These are not pirates. These are soldiers with rules of engagement. More reports came in over the following days. A supply depot destroyed, but only the military sections. A communication relay disabled, but the emergency broadcast system left working. A patrol base eliminated, but the nearby civilian settlement untouched. The pattern was clear. Someone was systematically dismantling Kether military infrastructure while carefully avoiding civilian casualties. Then came the breakthrough Theron had been dreading. A wounded Kether soldier had managed to record part of an attack on his personal device. The quality was poor and only lasted 30 seconds, but it showed something that changed everything. The attackers had removed their helmets. Their faces were clearly visible. They were human. Theron played the recording for Kalen in private. The War Prince stared at the screen in disbelief. Impossible. Humans do not have military forces capable of this. The evidence suggests otherwise, Your Highness. Kalen smashed his fist against the wall, leaving a dent in the metal. They are merchants, diplomats. They write papers and make speeches. Sir, with respect, perhaps we have been wrong about human capabilities. The War Prince turned on his advisor with fury. Are you suggesting that I was wrong to execute that pathetic human female? That I should have feared her weak species? Theron chose his words carefully. I am suggesting, Your Highness, that the human reaction to Ambassador Cross's death has been unexpected. More attacks followed. Each one was perfectly executed. The humans seemed to know exactly where to strike for maximum effect. Weapon storage facilities, shipyards, training bases, all hit with surgical precision. But the humans were not just destroying military targets. At each attack site, they left behind detailed records of Kether war crimes, files showing torture of prisoners, enslavement of conquered populations, destruction of civilian cities. Information the Empire had carefully hidden was now being broadcast throughout the galaxy. Species that had feared the Kether began to turn against them. Former allies distanced themselves. Neutral worlds refused to allow Kether ships to dock. The Empire's reputation, built on fear and respect for strength, crumbled as their cruelty was exposed. Admiral Crix called an emergency meeting. The humans are systematically destroying Kether infrastructure while revealing classified military information. This goes beyond simple revenge. Trade Minister Velter studied the attack patterns. Look at these. They are not random. The humans are specifically targeting systems that support Kether expansion. They are trying to contain the Empire. But how? Asked Dr. Seifel. Our intelligence says humans have never fought a major war. How do they know so much about military strategy? The answer came from an unexpected source. Professor Zulmer, a Rigelian archaeologist who had been studying human colony worlds, requested an emergency audience. Honored delegates, he began, his multiple arms gesturing excitedly. I have made a disturbing discovery about human history. He activated a holographic display showing human colony worlds. For 3 centuries, we assumed humans were peaceful explorers who stumbled upon space travel. But my evidence suggests something very different. The hologram zoomed in on several worlds. These planets show evidence of massive battles fought before humans joined galactic civilization. Not primitive conflicts, sophisticated military campaigns using advanced technology. What kind of battles? Asked Speaker Zarthel. Wars of conquest, Speaker. The humans did not peacefully explore their local stellar neighborhood. They conquered it. Every potentially hostile species within 50 light-years of Earth was destroyed or absorbed before they ever contacted the wider galaxy. The chamber fell silent. The humans we have known for 3 centuries are not peaceful by nature, Zulmer continued. They are a warrior species that chose to present themselves as harmless traders and diplomats. But why? Admiral Crix demanded. If they were so powerful, why hide it? Because they learned from studying us. They observed galactic civilization for decades before making contact. They saw how military strength determined political status. They realized that appearing weak would make them more useful as mediators and less threatening as neighbors. The revelation spread quickly. Humans were not the harmless merchants everyone had believed. They were predators who had been carefully watching and learning for 300 years. Back on his flagship, Kalen received reports that his home world's outer defenses had been probed by unknown ships. They had not attacked, but they had mapped every defensive installation before disappearing. General Theron entered the bridge with the latest intelligence. Your Highness, our allies are abandoning us. The Hyberian Dominion has withdrawn their battle fleet. Even our client species are refusing our calls. Kalen stared at the tactical display. Red markers indicated destroyed facilities. Yellow markers showed damaged infrastructure. Green markers representing fully operational military assets were becoming rare. How many ships do we have left? He asked quietly. Perhaps 200 still in fighting condition, sir. But morale is low. The crews are afraid. Afraid. Kether do not fear anyone. Theron gestured to the display. Sir, look at what they have done to us. 40 military installations destroyed. 60 ships eliminated. And we have never even seen their main fleet. For the first time in his life, Kalen felt something he had never experienced. Not quite fear, but the beginning of doubt. How many humans could there be? Their worlds are not that large. Intelligence suggests they may have a larger population than we realized. Many of their colony worlds appear to be heavily inhabited fortress planets. And sir, we have detected massive shipyards in the dark spaces between stars. Industrial facilities we never knew existed. Kalen closed his eyes. Admiral Sarah Reyes sat in the command chair of the human dreadnought Righteous Fury, watching the tactical display with calm satisfaction. Around her, the largest fleet ever assembled by humanity moved through space like a dark storm cloud. 2,000 warships surrounded the Kether home world of Keth Prime. War Prince Kalen's flagship, Eternal Glory, hung motionless in the center of the human formation. It was not destroyed, but completely helpless. Every system had been disabled by weapons that cut through Kether technology like paper. Reyes activated the communication system. War Prince Kalen, this is your final opportunity to surrender. You have 10 minutes to respond. On the bridge of his crippled ship, Kalen stared at the screen showing thousands of human vessels surrounding his home world. General Theron stood beside him, equally broken. Sir, our defense fleet is gone. Our orbital stations are destroyed. If we do not surrender, they will bombard the planet. Kalen had spent his entire life believing in Kether's superiority. They were the strongest species in the galaxy. They conquered other worlds and enslaved weaker species. It was the natural order. But now his mighty empire lay in ruins, destroyed by the species he had considered most pathetic of all. How? He whispered. How did we not know? Because they did not want us to know, sir. They spent 3 centuries learning our weaknesses while hiding their strengths. The screen showed Admiral Reyes, who looked remarkably like the diplomat Kalen had murdered. The same dark hair, the same brown eyes, the same calm expression. But where Ambassador Cross had radiated warmth, this woman projected cold authority. War Prince Kalen, she said. I am Admiral Sarah Reyes. Ambassador Cross was my older sister. Kalen felt something die inside his chest. Not fear, but the final collapse of everything he had believed. You have 2 choices, Reyes continued. Surrender unconditionally and face trial for the murder of a human diplomat, or watch your home world burn. Choose now. Kalen looked around his bridge at the officers who had followed him faithfully. Brave warriors who had never known defeat. Now they waited for his decision, knowing that their lives and the lives of billions on the planet below hung on his words. I surrender, he said quietly. The Kether Empire formally capitulated within hours. The surrender was broadcast throughout the galaxy, showing proud Kether warriors laying down their weapons before humans they had considered inferior. But Admiral Reyes was not finished. 2 weeks later, the Galactic Council met in emergency session, this time with human warships surrounding the facility. Reyes entered the main chamber wearing her military uniform, flanked by armed soldiers. She presented the Chen Accords, named after the murdered diplomat. New laws that would fundamentally change galactic politics. Diplomatic immunity would no longer protect murderers. A joint peacekeeping force would be established. Species that practiced slavery or destroyed civilian populations would face military intervention. Ambassador Cross died believing that peace was possible, Reyes told the assembly. She was wrong. This galaxy does not respect peace. It only respects power. So humans will provide power in service of peace. The accords were signed by every major power within days. Those who hesitated were visited by human fleets that made the choice very clear. 6 months later, David Torres stood in the rebuilt Galactic Council chamber. At its center stood a memorial to Elena Cross, a simple column of white marble inscribed with words in every major galactic language. She died believing in peace. Her death taught the galaxy why peace is necessary. Admiral Reyes approached, her military uniform replaced by civilian clothes. The Altarian-Kether conflict is officially resolved. Both species have agreed to binding arbitration under human oversight. David nodded. Elena would have been proud. Not of the war, but of the peace that came after. She always believed in second chances, Reyes said softly. Now the galaxy has won. They stood together in silence, honoring a woman who had died trying to save millions, and whose death had saved billions more. It was not the peace Elena Cross had envisioned, but it was peace nonetheless. And sometimes that was enough. The Chen Accords became galactic law within 30 days. Every major species signed, including the defeated Kether. War Prince Kalen stood trial before a council of 11 species, including humans, Altarians, and representatives from worlds his empire had once conquered. He was convicted of murder, crimes against sentient beings, and conspiracy to enslave populations. His sentence: permanent exile to a monitored world where he could harm no one. General Theron cooperated with authorities, providing detailed records of Kether military operations in exchange for leniency. He spent the remainder of his life teaching at the new Galactic Peace Academy, where human and alien officers learned to prevent wars rather than start them. The Kether Empire was dissolved. Its territories became independent systems, each with its own government and representation in the restructured council. Some worlds struggled. Others flourished. All of them watched the human fleets that patrolled their borders, not as conquerors, but as guarantors of peace. Admiral Sarah Reyes retired from active duty. She had accomplished what she set out to do: avenge her sister and reshape the galaxy. She bought a small house on the coast of Maine, overlooking the Atlantic. She grew tomatoes and rarely gave interviews. When asked about her legacy, she said only, "My sister wanted peace. I gave her the closest thing possible." David Torres became Earth's permanent representative to the new Galactic Council. He wore the same simple black suits that Elena Cross had favored. In every negotiation, he asked the same question: would Ambassador Cross have approved of this solution? It became known as the Chen Test, a standard for ethical diplomacy across the galaxy. The human fleet did not disappear. 2,000 warships remained on patrol, their crews rotating between duty stations and home. But the weapons were aimed less often. The threats became fewer. Species that had once measured strength by conquest now measured it by cooperation. Trade Minister Velter visited the memorial on the 5th anniversary of Elena Cross's death. He placed blue flowers at its base, Alterian morning blossoms, rare and precious. "She was my friend," he told the gathered delegates. "She taught me that strength without wisdom is just violence. I have tried to honor her memory every day since." Dr. Marcus Webb returned to Altair 4. The research he had abandoned was restarted, this time with human military protection. No alien power would ever threaten his work again. He sent David a single message: "The xenobiology is fascinating. But the xenopolitics are even more interesting now." The Galactic Council Station was rebuilt. The new chamber had a circular table with no head, no thrones, no elevated positions. Every delegate sat at the same height. On the wall behind the speaker's platform, the Chen Accords were engraved in 73 languages, every known tongue in the galaxy. And in the center of the chamber, where the oldest species had once placed their symbols of power, stood a simple column of white marble. No weapons, no crowns, just names. Every diplomat who had died in service to peace, from every species, carved into stone. Elena Cross's name was first. Not because she was human. Because her death had changed everything. David Torres visited the memorial on the 10th anniversary. He was old now, his hair gray, his steps slower. But his eyes were still sharp when he looked at the column. "You would have hated this," he said quietly. "A galaxy held together by warships and threats. That wasn't your vision." He paused. "But you would have loved the children. The ones who don't remember war. The ones who grow up thinking that peace is normal." He touched the cold stone. "That's your legacy, Elena. Not the fleets. Not the Accords. The children." Behind him, a group of schoolchildren from a dozen species ran past, laughing. They carried no weapons. They wore no armor. They were just children, playing in a chamber that had once been filled with fear. David smiled. "Rest now, my friend. The galaxy is in good hands." He turned and walked away, leaving the memorial to stand alone, a reminder that peace was not free, but it was worth every cost. The stars shone down on a galaxy that had finally learned to listen. Not because it wanted to. Because someone had made it necessary. Ambassador Elena Cross had died for peace. In the end, she got exactly what she wanted. Just not the way she expected.